Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, I'm going over the newest, hottest kayak to hit the market in 2025. And that is the kayak that just debuted at ICAST 2025. And that is the Native Kayak Hammer. And this is one of the hottest kayaks. I've seen a ton of videos on it coming out of ICAST. But I want to discuss a couple things where I think they really missed the mark, and I don't think I've seen anybody really make a video on it or really discuss it. And I'm going to show you exactly what that is. But then I'm also going to include two things that I think they did a really good job of improving on the kayak. So let's get right to it. All right, so this is obviously not the Native Hammer here. This is the Native LTE, and I love this kayak, but I can use this to demonstrate something that I think is going to be a key problem with the kayak. So a lot of people these days are putting captain's bridges on. I built this one myself, and it's my own custom design for the LTE, a lot smaller, but a lot of people want the ability to mount two graphs. So imagine if there were two graphs there. Now with the folding drive is actually going to come up and fold right there. So the key problem is that with a captain's bridge, that's not going to work. And so the argument that I've seen is that, well, instead of having, the captain's bridge there, you can independently mount two different graphs on either side, and then this can come up in the middle. So the problem is that the orientation of these pedals changes. And even with my captain's bridge, I've got to be cognizant of making sure that I'm not putting it in or stowing it and hitting the screen. So you got to make sure the pedals are oriented in the right manner if you're going to stow that. But where that comes into a key problem, even if you mount one on either side, and granted this kayak is not as wide as the Native Hammer, but you're going to run into problems even if you have a screen here, is where that drive is going to fold up. That pedal is going to hit that screen, and really pay attention to make sure you don't end up jamming one of these pedals into the screen. So their solution that they're saying of mounting two separate graphs, I don't really think is a good, solution to that problem. And, I'm not here to bash on Native. I think they have some great designers and stuff. I just think it was simply an oversight when they were designing the kayak. But what do I think is a workaround? When I really look at the kayak, I think that this is primarily going to be a kayak that is primarily for people that want to use a motor and then have the possible ability to use the drive system. So, if you're primarily just going to be using a motor, it's not going to be a huge concern. You just got to know that if you do plan on using your Propel drive or the folding Propel version of the drive, that you might have some problems with it hitting your captain's bridge if that's something you want to do. Another thing that you could do is mount a graph on either side of where you sit. And the problem with mounting one graph on one side and not having one on the other is, especially with some of the bigger graphs, is it causes the kayak to lean a little bit, and it's going to cause a little bit of drag, and it makes it turn that direction. And I know it's kind of hard to understand off my hand here, but you really kind of want to make sure that you have the weight even on the kayak. So that's why I was saying maybe mount one on either side of the seat. So that could be a possible workaround, but I do think it's a big oversight on the way that the kayak was designed. All right, and the second point that I would say is kind of like a negative to some people is going to be the way the bow is designed. The bow is super cool, and it does have a really cool feature where it has an eyelet on it so you can crank your boat onto your trailer. But on the other side of that is it's really pointy, and that's going to be great for efficiency whenever you're using a motor or the drive system, going forward, really getting up to speed. But having that really pointy bow is also going to make it a little bit harder to turn in, especially if you're in an environment where there's current. Let's say you're in a river, and this probably isn't really what that kayak's designed for, is rivers and streams, but it's going to make it harder to turn because that bow is going to really cut into the water. And the other aspect of the bow that might cause issues is underneath the on the front of the bow, they integrated two handles underneath of where the bow of the kayak is, and that might cause some water slap if you're getting in some big waves where it's going to slap up under that little cup in the kayak. So probably not a huge deal to most people, but it's just something to be aware of after having years and years of being on kayaks. It's just something that I thought of whenever I saw the design of the kayak. So now I want to get to the positives, and one thing that I think is a huge positive, they didn't even go over it in the video at all, is this right here, and that is they put drains in around where the rudder is. And none of their other kayaks have this, and I've actually brought it up before, is that this causes some leakage into the kayak through where the rudder cables enter the kayak. And on the new design, they have 2 little slits there so water can drain. I know it's not a huge deal to most, but it's going to help some with water intrusion on that kayak. All right, and then the second good point about the kayak is they specifically talk about reinforcing the motor mount on the rear of the kayak. And I'll show you a little something on my kayak here. So granted, this is the LTE, so it's not the same kayak, but I want to show you something. You can see that over time, especially being out in the heat in this kayak, over time having this motor on here, it's kind of slowly bent that motor mount up and it's flexed quite a bit. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to be noticeable. I'm not really concerned at this point with how strong it is, but hopefully with that reinforced motor mount, I can't imagine the weight of the NK300. I'm sure that's a lot heavier than what this NK180 Pro is, but I'm sure that it would cause that to flex a lot if you didn't have a really good reinforced motor mount here. So overall, I think that the Native Hammer has some really cool features, and then it has some that really, in my mind, kind of miss the mark. So I just kind of want to discuss at the end of the video, who is the Native Hammer built for? And that's where I'm going to get into all this, but this kayak was built for people that fish lakes, bigger water, and more than likely tournament fish. In my mind, it's built to be something that's going to compete with like a Hobie Pro Angler or the Bonafide XTR 130. Those really big platforms that are great for tournament fishing. I'm just going to call them, I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, but they're like mini bass boats. That's all it is. And so, you know, that's why specifically whenever I was talking about having the captain's bridge mount, that seems to be something that more tournament fishermen like to have on their boat. So that's why I kind of do think that it missed the mark hitting that, you know, feature for those tournament kayak fishermen that are out there. But you guys can feel free to let me know in the comments below what you think. For me, it's not really my cup of tea because I don't really like to fish lakes on kayaks anymore, especially with the danger of all the boat traffic and stuff. And I have a bass boat, so I don't really need it. But let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next one.